pretend it never happened. You know, if you spend any time on a landscape, wherever it is, you know, it can be anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, that landscape's changed over time. And the big recent change is, you know, especially in a landscape like the Everglades, are all the canals and the levees and the pumps and the coastal development and the agriculture that have gone in. You know, it's all changed over time, and it changed before the original freshets got interrupted, before we really started quantifying what those are. So trying to figure out what a landscape is, you end up hitting the history books, and there's first-hand accounts, and one of those was Hugh Willoughby. Hugh Willoughby put a skiff in Lake Okeechobee, started in Lake Okeechobee, and he headed south through the Everglades. And other people did that, I'm sure, but he wrote down about it. He wrote down in a pretty vivid prose. And in the modern day, you know, historians and scientists have used those accounts and others to try to rebuild what that pre-drainage landscape looked like. And, you know, the more you read those accounts, they kind of, and, you know, you try to piece them together and imagine what it was like, what it could have been. And then at night you go to sleep. And if you spend enough time on anything, that's when your dreams start to shape the information you absorbed. So that's kind of the premise on this song, is Hugh Willoughby shows up in my dreams and he said, "Hop aboard the skiff, here we go." The song was very much, I'm reminded of Samuel Coleridge's poem in Kubla Khan. And Xanadu de Kubla Khan, a stately dome decree. I got those words mixed up. Anyhow, when he wrote that, he wrote it kind of in a dream sequence. He wrote it when he was, you know, semi-lucid, and it just was all flowing through his head. And then somebody knocked at the door and interrupted him. And I think this song has a little bit of that character. I kind of wrote it all in one fell swoop. And I remember thinking, oh God, this is a good song, I have to work on it. But I went back and worked on it, and it was pretty much done. There was nothing to change, and the trance had been broken. And so the song is structured in 4 parts. The first is that opening voyage or trip, journey with Hugh Willoughby. He's leading me through the pre-drainage Everglades, you know, and into the Big Cypress, and then we wake up, and then the next is leading through a journey of that paradise being torn apart for economic development, you know, agriculture and draining the landscape. It ending in a nightmare, waking up from a nightmare. And then the third stanza is nature fighting back and kind of dealing with some of the unintended consequences. You know, the battle's on. The battle's on. Nature's fighting back and doing things unexpected, and the drainers and developers are fighting back, trying to get it right how they want it. You know, and achieving, you know, at the end you'll see kind of who wins, and the state of nature and the state of who's clicking the glasses at the end. And then finally, the final stanza is, you know, kind of more hopeful, thinking about, well, we can take this back and return it to a more natural state, and then waking up from that dream too. So it's all a dream, and what's possible, the dreams haunt and they inspire. And what's reality, what's not reality. I mean, the pre-drainage is gone, you know, it wasn't even done in time where there was good photography, so it's all inference on what it might have been and speculation, kind of a reality check that, well, it's not going back to that way. But what if it did? You know, I think that's why we dream. So that's the song. And it's a little bit of history lesson too. You know, I think you can only read about the history of the Everglades so many times. Maybe you need a song in there too, a good song about the Everglades. The song was also a companion piece. I wrote another song called Preserved, and after I wrote it, it was kind of told from the perspective of a third generation grandson of one of the old guard swamp rats who had a cabin out in the swamp, and he's taking his final trip out to that cabin. The memories are swirling. It's kind of acceptance, bitterness, and rage. It also then documents a journey into that cabin and back, and ultimately resolution. And when I wrote that song, I'm like, oh my God, that's the anchor song to this second album, the Green Album. My second album, the Green Album, which is loosely modeled after the Beatles' White Album. And it just really tied the song together. And then came Pretend It Never Happened, which takes a similar historical look back on how things have changed. So I think we're haunted and inspired and tied inexorably to the past. You can only live in the present, and the future is what's yet to come. But the past gives us so much context for everything around us. You know, it's tied deeply to who we are personally and our communities as well. So it's good to get those stories out there through song. Why not? Otherwise they just kind of are unaccessible, or they never quite materialize. And it gives something to talk about maybe. So that's, Pretend It Never Happened. That's kind of some thoughts on how it did happen, how the song happened. So thanks for listening.